Psalm 130, a prayer for pardon and mercy. Out of the depths I cry to you, Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for mercy. If you, Lord, kept a record of sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, so that we can, with reverence, serve you. I wait for the Lord. My whole being waits, and in his word I put my hope. I wait for the Lord, more than watchmen wait for the morning. More than watchmen wait for the morning. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him is full redemption. He himself will redeem Israel from all their sins. The New Testament reading is Romans chapter 8, verses 6 through 11, in which Paul instructs the Roman Christians to set their mind on the things of the Spirit and not of the flesh. If our minds are ruled by our desires, we will die. But if our minds are ruled by the Spirit, we will have life and peace. Our desires fight against God because they do not and cannot obey God's laws. If we follow our desires, we cannot please God. You are no longer ruled by your desires, but by God's Spirit, who lives in you. People who don't have the Spirit of Christ in them don't belong to him, but Christ lives in you. So you are alive because God has accepted you, even though your bodies must die because of your sins. Yet God raised Jesus to life. God's Spirit now lives in you, and he will raise you to life by his Spirit. The Gospel reading is the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, from the Gospel of John, chapter 11, verses 1 through 45. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he who you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them. After After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and calling for you." And when Mary heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Pain refers to the inevitable discomfort that occurs in our lives. Resistance refers to any effort to protect ourselves from pain. And suffering, it is the result when we resist the pain. Suffering is the physical and emotional stress we add to our pain, layer upon layer. In this formula, how we relate to pain determines how much we will suffer. When our resistance to pain is reduced to zero, the same will happen with our suffering. Now, the whole world is in pain and in suffering. Pain, we suffer and we see it every day through the news, to the papers, to the web. And we can notice how many people is already suffering without control. Pain is something that we cannot avoid, but suffering, it is optional. It seems that the more intense our emotional pain, the more we suffer, obsessing, blaming ourselves and feeling our limitations. The good news is that since most of the pain in our life is actually suffering, we can do something about it. Pain is a form of anticipation in the cross of Christ. Faced with pain in its many forms, powerlessness and disability of us, and that is also always we will experience. We are never as lonely when we are in pain. But in this time, in the time of pain and in the time of suffering, when we are crying and when our heart and our spirit is in pain, let us make a room to God in our lives so that He comfort us, help us, give us the passion that we need to support this path. Let us draw from pain and suffering the lesson that Christ has given to us on the cross. Pain is the source of salvation and merit. I will also recommend, according with many theologians, but also psychology doctors, who try to tell that we not should to try to rationalize the suffering and the pain. Suffering is part of our human condition, and if we looking for an answer why we are suffering or why we have pain, the pain, the reason, sometimes don't have any answer. Instead of trying to explain it, let's make sense of it. Instead of wanting to understand it, let's make meritorious. Instead of demanding answers from God, let's accept it with humble. Giving or looking for explanation does not fill our hearts, because pain is not solved by knowing the answer. The pain is assumed and giving it meaning. That is what the Lord teaches from the cross. So, let us open our hearts and let us open our minds to learn from the pain and from the suffering. Because pain is liberating, it teaches detachment from things. It educates in the desire for heaven. It proclaims the nearness of God. It demonstrates the meaning of human life. It proclaims the expiration of our illusions. Furthermore, the pain is universal. Whether physical or moral, it is present in the life of all human beings. Children and young people, adults or elderly. No one escapes its presence. Let us not be deceived by appearance, although they are more heartbreaking and visible sufferings than others, and pain is saving. The love live with suffering Savior. Bring us God closer. Make us understand that only in God can comfort be found. God, He perfectly knows what it means to have suffering. And in the scripture that we're reading today, is an example about how God suffered, because He do it through the person of Jesus. And any kind of suffering, small or big, it hurts Him. God is not insensitive to our suffering. He is not the one who laughs from above when He sees His children are in pain and anguish. When Martha met Jesus to claim Him, Jesus feels sorry for her and for Mary. Also, Jesus feels sorry for Lazarus because he loves him. Jesus feels sorry for himself because Lazarus is his friend. God sympathized with his own son too. The heart and suffering. Wherever someone suffers, there is God hurting, comforting, encouraging. We cannot but feel seen by God and loved tenderly when our hearts are in kind and pain, and any kind of pain. Through the humanity of Jesus, the heart of God has entered into the human heart. Nothing of ours is a strange to him, including the suffering and the pain. Today, suffering is knocking on the doors of all the entire world. For some people, pain and suffering will be accepted as something irreparable. For us, the people of God, suffering and pain must be the presence of the crucified Christ. If Christ is not on our cross, everything will be useless and perhaps end in despair. Suffering for Christians must be a school, a source of merit, and a way of salvation. Suffering in our life has become as a school of life. If we look at suffering with eyes of faith and humility, we will begin to understand that suffering can teach us many things. For example, to live detached from material things. Obviously, to value life more. To take God that is the only thing that does not fail. To accept a normal and natural reality of our existence. Teach us that nothing is forever. Also, teach us to be compassionate. We, in the scripture of today, we can see a Jesus to feel compassion for his friends. And compassion is a way of being in life, a way of existence. I, like Jesus, to help to comfort the suffering of everyone. Thus, we are invited by Jesus to be in life, to life our existence, being compassionate. Compassion is the one that opened the door to freedom, the one that made the small heart as big as the world. Be compassionate is suffering together. And since suffering is universal, compassion is communal too. Suffering is a true school of life, and it goes against of all those proposals for an easy, comfortable, pleasant life that society proposes to us today. But the society today knows that the life is not so easy. But suffering teaches that we should to increase our faith. Today, when many of us, we are in isolation, it's a good time to to be in contemplation. To occupy our minds in better things. To occupy our minds to looking which one is the purpose of this pain and suffering. Don't try to explain why is happening to us this, because we can be capable to find the reason. But we should to see the cross and the Son of God in that cross to strengthen our faith, to looking for a source of love, and to face our Lord and talk with Him. May God never allow suffering and pain to discourage us, separate us from Him, provoke rebellion in us, plunge us into sadness, make us hate life. On the contrary, that suffering and pain serve to make our hearts brighter and to help us understand more those who are suffering now. This morning, as many of you, the first thing I make is to take my phone and to check what is happening around the world. We know what is happening. But I found this beautiful prayer, and it's something I would like to share with you. You could have arrived on time, at the time when it was necessary, before everything happened, before it was too late. You could have been when we called you. You could have answered our prayers. You could have answered our requests. You could have sent us a signal. You could have done the miracle. Or you could just have come to share the pain, to give us a hug, to cry silently, to share a word of encouragement, to give us your blessing. If you had been here, possible nothing will have happened. The disease will not have hit our life. Death will not have entered our homes. The pandemic will not have spread so voraciously. We should not be locked in our houses. Where were you, good friend? Where were you, master? Where are you now? What do you have to tell us? Probably this is the same word that many of us has. But the answer of Jesus is this one. I have never been away. Here I am, always on the way, to meet those who cry and suffer. Have no fear. The world is not dead, and wake up to a new way of living, to understand each other, to build relationships, to generate communities of conclusion, to equity of deeper hugs, of opportunities to every human being without distinction of race, gender, of social status, of places of residence. The world will wake up from this long dream of selfishness and ambitions and see the new day from a restored land. and of fairer and more supportive societies, and there it will manifest fully the glory of God. I am the resurrection and the life, Jesus told us. He who believes in me, even though he dies, will live. And everyone who is still alive and believes in me will never die. The question to the people of God is this: do you believe this? You can say, yes, Lord, I believe. I can say it the most of the time. Sometimes, no. But the truth is, I am learning about this. I hope everybody do it. And I hope you could believe too.